Holy f.
Things are not going well at the Daily Wire. They're losing talent, laying off staff, and their CEO, Jeremy Boring, has resigned. I believe the first major catalyst was the company's foray into the world of movies and television. Many of the people at the Daily Wire have, at various times, tried to make it in the world of entertainment. Jeremy Boring had produced and written several shorts, Ben Shapiro was an aspiring screenwriter, Michael Knowles was an actor, and Andrew Klavan has writing credits for a few produced movies. Their levels of success varied from no success at all to a modest amount of success, though none of them seemed satisfied with what they have achieved. They would often voice complaints that it wasn't so much their lack of talent that held them back, but rather a bias against conservatives in Hollywood. For those unfamiliar with Shapiro's history, as a young conservative, he had a column and had written a few books. For his fourth book, Primetime Propaganda, he used that public profile to attain access for several interviews with various studio executives. Scripts he had written were read by studio executives and agents, and he, as a talent, was being shopped around town for a potential job. Eventually, though, his agent dropped him because of his existing writing credits, marking him as someone that people in the entertainment industry wouldn't want to work with. One of the books Ben Shapiro had written was titled Porn Generation, How Social Liberalism is Corrupting Our Future.
True.
More than just a provocative title, that book is also an absolutely wild read. Here's an excerpt from the book describing a performance at the 2003 MTV Video Music Awards. The competing princesses of Pop-Tart whoredom, Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, both dressed in sluttish bridal costumes, popped out of wedding cakes, and began singing Madonna's 1984 hit, Like a Virgin. Finally, Madonna made her grand entrance, dressed in black, form-fitting S&M groom outfit.
I've always felt this way, though, before being a streamer or anything. I don't like movies where there are men that are getting... I don't know if these are, like, power fantasies or what, but where there are these, like, loser men that end up getting women that are way too good for them without having any redeeming qualities. Okay? I watched for the first time yesterday a movie that I probably should have seen at some other point in my life called Mallrats. These guys are... well, at least, like, the main character isn't as much of a loser, but the guy who, like, sits at home, like, playing video games all day and is, like, a piece of shit to his girlfriend, or, like, I don't know, I feel like this guy's just a f***ing loser. Why do these guys get or deserve to get... I don't know, it's just cringe as f***. Destiny, that's every 2000s rom-com. Well, I feel like sometimes they try to have, like, redeeming moments a little bit. Like even Superbad, despite how raunchy the comedy is and everything, Superbad tries to be wholesome and stuff, where the characters kind of have, like, a realization moment of, like, I was just trying to be cool, or, like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done this, like, I was being a bad friend. Like, they have their moments of redemption in a way. But, I don't know, sometimes in movies, they're just, ugh. Wedding Crashers is crazy with this. I don't think I've seen that movie. I will say, though, maybe it's just getting old. Watching that movie, I was like, oh shit, I can tell by looking at these guys. These are my 90s and 2000s kids. Yes.
Madonna joined the two former Mouseketeers, and the three gyrated around the stage like hookers starved for Johns. He doesn't mention the part where Missy Elliott comes out later on for some reason, but he does go on to say that Madonna kissing Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera turned young girls bisexual.
Oh no.
I feel like I have to mention that Ben Shapiro here has the ghost of a point when it comes to how women are sexualized in entertainment, but his solution isn't about empowering women. Rather, he calls them whores and says they should promote heterosexual sex after marriage. The irony of this origin story, though, is that Ben Shapiro had more of an opportunity in Hollywood than so many other aspiring writers. He had meetings with former studio executives and offers to develop a pilot. Getting an agent to read your script, never mind being brought on as a client, is a major opportunity. What Ben Shapiro never acknowledges is that it was his public profile as a conservative writer that got him these meetings with executives to begin with.
I don't mind your take, but what did it have to do with the video you're watching? Oh, because the incel thing came up, and that reminded me of the movie.
Starting him on this whole journey through Hollywood. That same public profile being his undoing seems to be lost to him. Whether or not conservatives have as many opportunities as more left-wing people in Hollywood purely based on their politics isn't really related to Ben's story, as it was very much him who was rejected for his very controversial writing credits. All of this speaks to the Daily Wire's entertainment ambitions and how they market them.
While that might be true, I'm sure just by virtue of there being so many left-leaning people in Hollywood, there probably is a little bit of a bias, I would imagine, against conservative type figures. Although Ben seemed to be extra special there, but
In 2021, they had an opportunity to make those dreams come true, and they were going to leverage their conservative media company to make it happen. A Daily Wire article announced this entertainment initiative, and in it, Ben Shapiro wrote, "We're going to be bringing out movies, edgy, entertaining, awesome movies that won't mock your values. We're going to be producing TV shows, comedies, and dramas that take you seriously and that don't take advantage of your viewership to promote leftist causes."
oh, this is always like, it is an interesting delusion. This is the same delusion I talk about with progressives, where progressives assume there's a whole bunch of people that are ready to join our platform. They just need to like hear about it or be told about it, and then they're ready to jump on. Conservatives entertained, he just said this, but like they entertain the same delusion when they say things like go woke, go broke. There's a whole bunch of people that are ready to consume good conservative, content, good conservative movies. They just haven't had them made yet, but it's just not really true.
He called Cinestate.
Was it the Sound of Freedom movie that allowed you to buy not only tickets for you, but tickets for like other people? And like 99% of these fucking tickets that were bought were just bought by people sending money to the owners to buy tickets for other people that didn't end up going to the movies. Like,
The first partner for the Daily Wire for this project was a production company called Cinestate, headed up by a guy named Dallas Saunier. At the time, the company had just changed its name to Bonfire Legend. This was done a few months after one of its producers, Adam Donaghy, was charged with sexually assaulting a minor. Saunier and other members of the company were accused of covering for Donaghy's previous actions committing sexual harassment.
oh, because I was going to say sexual harassment is a lot different than sexually assaulting somebody, but they were covering for sexual harassment, and then this came. Okay, I understand.
Jeremy Boring was very aware of this reporting before teaming up with Bonfire Legend. In a Daily Beast article, he was quoted as saying, "To the extent that things may have taken place in the production of this film or another film, I don't think it's my business. In the same way that it's not my business if something takes place at any other kind of company that I buy product from. I'm sure there have been allegations of sexual harassment at almost every major production company in the country. That doesn't mean the product itself has to be banned." The first product of this union, and the one Boring was referencing in that quote, was the movie Run, Hide, Fight, best described as Die Hard set in a school shooting. I've covered this before, but a short review for it is...
Conservative-friendly films are never overly conservative. It'll just be a movie about military heroes or what have you. I really should be careful with this because I haven't watched these movies. I've just seen like trailers and read reviews of them, so maybe I could be missing something here. But it feels like these movies are not just family-friendly movies or whatever. It seems like these movies go really far out of their way to like hit all the big conservative talking points. Like, wasn't that Sound of Freedom thing like... illegal immigrants from Mexico were sex trafficking young girls that like a brave American vet was trying to say? Like, I feel like at some point it's like, okay, like how many conservative tropes are we going to hit on here for this? I feel like I remember reading that and seeing that in the trailer and shit, but maybe I could be overplaying that because I didn't actually watch the movie. So
is that it's underwhelming. One mistake I saw a lot of people making when talking about this movie was describing it as being produced by the Daily Wire. It had actually wrapped production well before the deal was made with Bonfire Legend, and the movie was looking for distribution. That's really only part of the story, though. The movie was never meant to be distributed by an external company. Rather, Cinestate/Bonfire Legend was planning on releasing it under their new genre label, Rebeller. It was also a culture website that published various articles, books, and podcasts. Following the revelations about Adam Donaghy in June of 2020, Rebeller had to fold. While it's probably true that a movie about a school shooting would struggle to find a distributor, I think having the name of someone accused of sexually assaulting a minor as a producer probably hurt it even more. Also, Rebeller had something of a reputation for being more sensitive to the right. An article by Adrian Nguyen goes into some of its history and helpfully points out that the site was getting shoutouts from Ben Shapiro over a year before they went into business together. I think it's likely that Cinestate/Bonfire Legend wasn't exactly looking for a brave partner to distribute a challenging movie that woke Hollywood wouldn't touch, but rather they were looking to partner with a distributor that would take on their toxic movie. Run, Hide, Fight was released in January of 2021, and while it gets mocked, like all of the Daily Wire's movies, for making almost no money at the box office,
haters.
That's not entirely fair. In the case of Run, Hide, Fight, the only numbers I could find said that it made a little under $35,000, but it's important to remember
Jesus, really?
that this movie is primarily for online distribution, and while the Daily Wire doesn't share its streaming metrics, they claim to be very pleased with its performance. And I think this might be true. There was a lot of hype surrounding this entertainment initiative when it was announced, and this was their very first movie.
The conservatives were the bad guys in The Purge, no? Maybe, I don't remember, but what does The Purge have to do with anything we're talking about? What? The Purge was not a conservative movie?
The next release for the Daily Wire was Shut In, a thriller about a woman trapped in a closet while her drug addict ex threatens their children. Whereas Run, Hide, Fight was a finished product that the Daily Wire distributed, Shut In was the first movie they took a hand in producing. The script had been found by Dallas Sonye, and originally Jason Bateman was attached to direct. But the pandemic threw the project into disarray, and it ended up at the Daily Wire instead, with DJ Caruso now directing. This is probably the best of the Daily Wire's movies insofar that it's fairly average. The first two-thirds I would even describe as good, until it's let down by a very messy ending. There was some controversy surrounding the movie, as it included Vincent Gallo, who hadn't appeared in a movie since 2013, in part because of his behavior online, making various bigoted remarks, such as saying women shouldn't have the right to vote. On the business side of things, the Daily Wire did make one choice that seemed a bit odd. That was to first release Shut In on YouTube for free. It would air as a live stream, and anyone who missed that live stream or wanted to watch the movie again would have to sign up for the Daily Wire subscription service. They had actually done this for Run, Hide, Fight as well, although that movie had already premiered at the Venice Film Festival and had a very limited international release. Jeremy Boring explained that the stream would be limited to the US only, though I'm not sure how successful that was since I was able to watch that just fine in Canada. It's possible viewers of the Daily Wire might have had a hint on where to get a VPN.
We use ExpressVPN.
The only numbers I could find for Shut In pegged its box office at roughly $715,000, which is actually the most a Daily Wire movie has made at the international box office. The broadcast on YouTube first strategy would be used again for their next movie, The Hyperions. Like Run, Hide, Fight, this is another movie that had been produced prior, but failed to find distribution. There isn't much to say about this one aside from it being pretty forgettable, and that since none of the actors involved had any idea it would be on the Daily Wire, we don't have to hold it against Cary Elwes or anybody else. You've probably never heard of or don't remember any of these movies. This isn't really a surprise. It's incredibly difficult to break through to mainstream attention in the movie space, but considering the money being spent, the Daily Wire was falling well short of its lofty goals. In spite of Shut In and The Hyperions landing with a thud in the first half of 2022,
Something that happens with businesses that become successful, and I mean, warning, I guess I just run my own personal stuff, so maybe there's a thing I don't understand. But like whenever I start new ventures, I always try to make sure that these things have some kind of profitability in mind, that there's either some directly tied to it revenue generation or that it's funneling into something else. Sometimes I think that it's strange that people will start these new ventures and it feels like they have no idea at all how to make it profitable, or they're just like praying at some point that some kind of like profitability emerges. I feel like a lot of people that start one business and then try to hop ship to another one that end up failing, I feel like it's because of that. They just don't have that profitability ever in mind. For an example of this, the not the critical drinker guy, the Quartering, I feel like ran into this issue with his coffee stuff, but I don't know. Or I guess maybe he thought he was going to be profitable selling coffee. I don't know.
the Daily Wire was still riding high. It began releasing publicly numbers of its subscriber count and total revenue, declaring that it had 600,000 subscribers and revenue was projected at $100 million. By the end of the year, these numbers would be revised to over 1 million subscribers and up to $200 million in revenue. The movies I mentioned likely weren't fueling most of the growth. In fact, what was fueling that growth was almost certainly the June 2022 release of the Daily Wire's biggest success, Matt Walsh's What is a Woman? According to comments from Dallas Sonye, who produced the movie, its budget of $1 million was returned roughly 30-fold, and it became the most watched thing on the Daily Wire Plus platform. This movie didn't exactly come out of nowhere, as anyone who was on YouTube at the time remembers just how ubiquitous the ads for this movie were. The Daily Wire always aggressively marketed itself, with some public examples of spending being tens of thousands of dollars for high-profile articles on their website. This movie almost certainly had a lot more than that.
Selling coffee is 100% profitable. It sounded to me like the Quartering was leaving something out about how he was running the business. I mean, like you say profitable, but I feel like food is one of the most difficult markets to break into. Your profit margins are like razor thin, and you're competing with so many other established entities. I don't know, man. I feel like food is really rough.
Not spent on advertising. Whatever the cost that went into promoting the project, though, it certainly paid off. While the movie itself is a giant pile of anti-trans misinformation, it was undoubtedly a success for the Daily Wire, and you'll notice it's far closer to what made the Daily Wire famous in the first place, providing a polished sheen to conservative talking points, creating something that looks like a documentary but isn't much more than an op-ed written by someone with a childlike understanding of science. This is what their audience wants. On the other hand, there was another June 2022 release from the Daily Wire that was far less successful, the movie Terror on the Prairie, starring Gina Carano. This Western was meant to be Carano's big debut in a starring role following her dismissal from Disney after she compared being conservative in America to being Jewish in 1940s Germany. Carano had made those remarks in 2021 and was
she also in trouble because she was one of the people, or am I thinking of somebody else who was like, I'm not getting vaccinated. I'm taking a stand against these crazy vaccine people or whatever.
quickly signed by the Daily Wire to star in 2 movies for them. The first movie was supposed to be titled White Knuckle, but it was put on hiatus after COVID vaccine requirements for filming led to Carano pulling out. Instead, the Western Terror on the Prairie would be developed instead, as it was shooting in Montana, a state with less strict regulations on vaccinations for a film set. The deal the Daily Wire made with Carano seems to
That was the Wakanda actress as well? Okay.
have been a very bad one. Aside from her Western making almost no impact, the cost of starting a production on another movie, only for Carano to cancel because of vaccine requirements, was a complete waste of money, especially since the movie was never made at all. The juxtaposition of Terror on the Prairie and What is a Woman say a lot about this company, though. One was an attempt to make a mainstream feature, the other a pseudo-documentary for their conservative base. The first movie was a flop, the other was a success. It should have been a hint as to what path the Daily Wire should be focusing on. Instead, they would continue to try walking down both. At the end of June, the Daily Wire hosted a massive presentation where they announced Daily Wire Plus, a rebranding of their subscription service, I suspect to sound like Disney Plus. The initiative included a new deal with PragerU and signing Jordan Peterson as a talent. This event, hosted at this large theater, was the Daily Wire at its peak. Its subscriber count had nearly doubled that year, and its revenue was following in suit. Immediately using all that money to expand seemed like a great idea, but they vastly overestimated their ability to grow. After Terror on the Prairie, we wouldn't get another original movie from the Daily Wire for 1.5 years. No. And so far, it's the only one we've gotten since then. And that's the movie Lady Ballers. This anti-trans movie is the most cynical admission of what the Daily Wire's entertainment division would devolve into, playing to a conservative audience as the Daily Wire staff act out their Hollywood ambitions. The animated series Mr. Bertram is more of the same. While earlier efforts were mostly forgettable, these newer ones are outright embarrassing. It's a clear example of amateurs producing long, boring comedies about sad men giving off intense divorced guy energy. That being said, though, in the case of Lady Ballers, Jeremy Boring would describe it as the second most watched piece of content on Daily Wire Plus. As miserable as that movie may be, much like What is a Woman, it reflects what this particular audience wants. And it's very different from that attempt to reach the mainstream that were initially part of the Daily Wire's entertainment initiative.
I never would make a movie for political purposes. I feel like movies have been political for generations, but I feel like when things get overtly political or agenda pushing, I tend to believe that it hurts the artwork.
Had this been the Daily Wire...
The caption was, Sonny has gone on to produce every Daily Wire movie, including Lady Ballers, based.
Or agenda pushing, I tend to believe that it hurts the artwork.
Had this been the Daily Wire's game plan from the get-go, I think things would have gone very differently. But as it stands, they spent a lot of money to get where everyone imagined they were going to go in the first place. But while these movies and TV shows could be considered a modest failure, there was one major entertainment initiative that was a far bigger failure for the Daily Wire, and that's its kids' entertainment strategy. This was announced back in March of 2022 as the Daily Wire bravely declared it would invest $100 million over the course of 3 years to create kids programming. Much like their earlier entertainment initiative, this was also marketed as entertainment that didn't include leftist messages that were attempting to brainwash people.
True.
To succeed in our effort to create a true news and entertainment alternative for the millions of Americans who are tired of the hegemony of the woke giants that want to preach radical race and gender theory to our kids. We're not here to teach the kids in the guise of entertainment. This is entertainment with a capital E. Rob Schneider is a true entertainer.
After this announcement, it would be a year and a half, October of 2023, before we saw this kids streaming service, Bent Key.
Wait, is Rob Schneider the guy with the weird shit with the kids on Nickelodeon or Disney? Or am I crazy?
There was a minor bit of controversy when the streaming service's flagship series, Chip Chilla,
That's Dan Schneider, my bad.
Was accused of being a Bluey ripoff.
New TV series Chip Chilla is being dubbed a bootleg Bluey.
There were also fears that these shows would contain conservative brainwashing that were largely overblown, as most of these programs were bland, generic kids' entertainment. After the launch of Bent Key, no one really paid much attention to its lineup of original titles and licensed kid shows. While the Daily Wire wouldn't release how many people had subscribed to it, we could at least check the Google Play Store, which had the slightly vague metric of 50,000 plus downloads listed on the app's page. The Apple Store likely had similar numbers, as the app had similar reviews on both storefronts. It would be over a year before that number went from 50,000 plus downloads to 100,000 plus downloads. In all likelihood, there are probably less than 400,000 downloads for this service, and we have no idea how many of those free downloads led to someone actually purchasing a $100 annual subscription. Even if every single person who downloaded the Benki app purchased a $100 subscription, that still wouldn't even reach half of the $100 million that was pledged for the service. But the real kicker here is that these numbers and estimates I'm giving are way too generous. Because while it's true it does cost $100 for new subscribers who are getting Benki for the first time, if someone is an existing Daily Wire Plus subscriber, they got Benki for free. With Benki's download numbers dwarfing the subscriber count of Daily Wire Plus, we could only really guess at how many Daily Wire Plus subscribers got Benki, but I imagine since they were the first ones to hear about it, and most of the downloads for this service seem to come in its first month, most people who are using this service aren't paying for it. I doubt there's any way this massive investment made any sort of profit. In fact, it almost certainly cost the company millions, if not tens of millions of dollars. One move that might have helped salvage Bentkey was when they announced their own version of Snow White. It was a bit baffling a move because it was done entirely despite Disney, which is part of how they got in the whole Bentkey debacle to begin with. But by attaching a conservative personality like Brett Cooper to it, they could maybe tap into that same resentment that made a movie like Lady Ballers a hit.
Wait, did they actually make this movie? Or was this just a trailer? Did we miss this? Was this movie any good? It was just a teaser? Oh, okay.
Because it was done entirely despite Disney, which is part of how they got in the whole
Oh, because they were mad because that one girl that was Snow White was black or whatever, right?
Bentkey debacle to begin with. But by attaching a conservative personality like Brett Cooper to it, they could maybe tap into that same resentment that made a movie like Lady Ballers a hit. But it seems like that movie might never happen for several reasons. The first one being that, in late March, it was reported that the Daily Wire laid off a number of its staffers, specifically in its kids' entertainment department. Ethan Nicole, who left the Babylon Bee to help develop programming for the Daily Wire, confirmed that everyone who created original programming for Bentkey got laid off. The Snow White movie had another big problem as well, as its star, Brett Cooper, had left the company a few months earlier.
Rip.
And we have no idea how far into production that movie got before her departure. I should also mention the other big entertainment investment the Daily Wire made, the Pendragon cycle. The rights to produce a series based on the Pendragon cycle books was announced in 2022, alongside a new plan to adapt Atlas Shrugged. The Ayn Rand adaptation hasn't been mentioned since, but we have seen Jeremy Boring go hands-on to direct the Pendragon Cycle series. The various production diaries that have been posted online reveal a very expensive production. There's a big crew, stunts, special effects, and all the requirements that make TV productions of fantasy shows so expensive. This series is a very big bet. It was originally scheduled to come out in late 2023, though that release date has been pushed back, and as of early 2025, there's still no sign of the series. Similar to Bentkey, the Pendragon cycle appears as though it's a passion project for Jeremy Boring, something he personally championed and invested enormous resources into. Boring's departure from the company, I suspect, has something to do with all these massive investments and their limited or non-existent returns. The Pendragon cycle in particular looks to be a massive money sink. This show would need to be a breakout hit for it to be in any way profitable for the Daily Wire, and I suspect that simply isn't going to happen.
Hater.
Also, it shows us the Daily Wire hasn't fully learned the lessons it needed to from Lady Ballers. Its audience doesn't want mainstream entertainment. They want conservative coded movies that speak to their biases.
Slop.
In essence, they want a
AKA.
right-wing version of what they imagine Hollywood to be.
Yes.
It's not that they hate political messaging and entertainment, they just want it to be their political messaging. One of the big assumptions made by Jeremy Boring in this whole entertainment initiative was that there was a massive audience waiting for productions he considered politically neutral.
Go ahead, Disney, make $25 billion worth of content inculcating radical gender and race theory in children who are 6 years old.
What?
I don't have that money to spend on marketing. I'm glad you do. I know that 50% of everyone who encounters that content is going to want to come over to dailywire.com and subscribe here instead.
Wow.
What Boring
Brave.
fails to understand is that, while a large percentage of Americans vote Republican, they aren't all clamoring for a platform like his to start presenting movies and TV shows. If someone really wants politically neutral entertainment, why would you go to a partisan political platform? The only thing that might have made them have a chance is if they had a large selection of quality entertainment that people have actually heard of. But less than a dozen movies and a weak animated series after 4 years isn't nearly enough to win over a mainstream audience. This is especially true for Bentkey, which failed spectacularly and was so obviously a bad move. There were signs of a better strategy, where they actually licensed programs and produced several originals to come out at the same time, but the $100 price point for a service with no recognizable shows in a landscape filled with competitors offering better deals with more
Wait,
programs.
sorry, hold on. Wait, it was actually a $100 subscription fee? Sorry, I just caught that price. $100 a year? Oh. Still, that's a whole, isn't that like competitive with, like how much does Netflix or Hulu or whatever cost per month?
I mean, wasn't realistic. And to have invested so much money, reaching roughly $30 million in its first year, it's just
$7 a month? Okay.
a spectacular waste. If that massive audience waiting for conservative branded TV and movies exists, it certainly didn't show up for the Daily Wire.
Oof.
Investing into money pits like entertainment weren't the only mistakes made by the Daily Wire. Their terrible management of high-profile personalities was also another mistake. There was a minor blow-up in early 2023 when Steven Crowder went public with a contract he considered unfair that the Daily Wire offered him.
Oh, no.
This more or less blew over when footage of Crowder being verbally abusive to his pregnant wife before they eventually divorced surfaced. There were a few elements of this feud between Steven Crowder and the Daily Wire I want to highlight, particularly a phone call he recorded with Jeremy Boring about a contract he was offered. It gave us some insight into the Daily Wire's hiring policies.
Bench talent, young talent, they don't get deals like this.
So they don't get deals that...
They can be wage slaves for a little bit, come over and make a salary and grow their brand.
This is an important bit of information that gives us a sense of how the Daily Wire treats its talent, particularly
This is, by the way, this is standard practice at every single company or anything that hires talent, where the majority of them basically do nothing and you just get a few standout stars. This is how all of esports works, how all of everything works. Jeremy Boring got raked for really just being honest about how the industry works, but how all these industries work and how they probably should work. There's no other way to really do it.
Particularly its new talent, paying them slave wages while their online identity is being built, and then possibly offering them a bigger contract down the line. Steven Crowder's initial offer had a staggering dollar figure of $50 million over 4 years, a fact Crowder didn't share at the time. Far more damaging for the Daily Wire than the Steven Crowder controversy was the departure of Candace Owens. She had joined the platform in 2021 and...
Although I will say, it feels like Crowder has fallen off significantly since then. Was it because, did Crowder leave the Blaze? Is he gone from that now, or...?
Starred in the program called Candace. In March of 2024, Candace Owens' departure was announced by Jeremy Boring on Twitter. The reason for her departure was never made entirely clear, though many assumed it was her butting heads publicly with Ben Shapiro, particularly over the ongoing genocide in Gaza. This explanation, while logical, has a few confounding facts. Candace Owens' support for the Palestinian people doesn't seem entirely genuine. In fact, in 2019, she tweeted that Congressional Representative Ilhan Omar should be deported.
Didn't Crowder have one of the largest 2024 election showings? No, I don't believe that. I know that number is cited a lot, but those are, I believe, exclusively Rumble figures. I love you all.
Criticizing the ongoing violence in Gaza. While it might be tempting to say her turn on Israel was a result of the state's actions after October 7th in 2023, it appears her pivot started almost a year prior when she retweeted an anti-Zionist statement from Max Blumenthal, leading to a public confrontation with Ben Shapiro. I'm not sure why or how Candace Owens turned in her Zionist card in these intervening years, but she seems very aware that making comments like the ones she made in November of 2022 would annoy her boss. Owens would continue to make comments like these until eventually she left the company. There are rumors floating about saying that she wanted to get out of her contract or that some sort of gag order was placed on her, but it's been difficult to confirm any of that. And it's quite likely that Candace Owens is happy to play into controversy that raises her profile. What is undeniable is that Owens' departure
because didn't Candace say at the time, wasn't she talking about how she was going to make everything public and she was going to expose the Daily Wire and everything, but like I don't think anything ever came from that. Nothing actually happened, right?
Huge loss for the Daily Wire, as she has gone on to have massive success since leaving. She is getting millions of views on her YouTube channel, which mixes celebrity news and absurd conspiracy theories. Another talent the Daily Wire lost was Brett Cooper. While Owens was a known commodity before signing with the Daily Wire, Cooper was more or less plucked from obscurity. Some producers at the Daily Wire created the format for her show, and then she was hired to fill that role. Shortly after, she became very popular at the Daily Wire, with her show, The Comments Section, being one of the most viewed at the company. Cooper had become so ingrained into the Daily Wire that she was set to appear in the Snow White movie and the Pendragon cycle, only the latter of which actually wrapped filming, so we know she'll at least still be appearing in that, assuming it ever gets released. Brett Cooper announced she was leaving the Daily Wire in December of 2024. Much like Candace Owens' departure, Cooper has largely remained tight-lipped about why she left, although she did offer a diplomatic farewell.
Today, December 10th, will be my last day hosting the comment section and working for the Daily Wire. It is not true that I am being forced out. It was my own choice to leave. And believe me, this is bittersweet.
The comments section has gone on without Brett Cooper, with her producer Reagan Conrad taking on hosting duties. I can only assume the Daily Wire believed that since they created the format, they could swap hosts and move on like normal. Only this...
Well, I mean, no, it's probably more just I seriously doubt they thought it would carry on like normal. It was just they had to, right? There was nothing else. Like, you're not just going to trash the whole show that you already built up. So you swap someone else in and just see how it goes. It's going to be cheaper than starting something from the ground up or just killing the entire brand, right?
Isn't like replacing Johnny Carson with Jay Leno on The Tonight Show, because it's easier to click on a new video than find a different TV show to watch at 11:30 on a weekday evening. The response to Conrad has been very hostile, with lots of nasty comments and a huge drop-off in views. Right. And undoubtedly, the comments section is a shell of what it once was. This cynical host swap is very much what you'd see on Fox News or some other traditional media outlet, completely misunderstanding the digital space and the importance of personalities.
Well,
What's funny
I mean,
about Brett Cooper's goodbye is she
like...
expresses this vague desire for new challenges and new endeavors.
I am ready to take on a new direction, both personally and professionally. This means new challenges and new endeavors, which I will share with you soon.
Apparently this means starting a YouTube channel where she is doing more or less the exact same show, but probably keeping more of the money. Much like Candace Owens, Brett Cooper started her own independent show and is racking up some very impressive numbers, mostly talking about celebrity culture with an embedded right-wing framing. The Daily Wire must look at these numbers and regret their mistake in letting Cooper go, whatever she might have been.
We don't know what happened there, but I'm so curious what those talks were like or what the decision was like in terms of releasing her. Because I feel like Brett Cooper, without knowing too much, I guess, about all, because I don't consume all the Daily Wire stuff, I feel like Brett Cooper is, it's like a star talent that you get where you get a person who has basically no scandals at all. She doesn't have these huge confrontations with other online content creators or with your own staff about like anti-Zionism or anti-Semitism or anything like that. She's just like a solid, you just like stick her in that show, have her pump out content, and the viewership was, I think, pretty good. Did they delete all of the old videos of hers on this channel?
Well, Meghan Markle...
No, they didn't. So like this channel, or actually we can just look at, holy fuck. I wonder how much of these are shorts. Wait, that other website will say it. I broke free from the Crowder hellhole when the whole wife thing happened. That's when I started watching you and completely broke from the right. So I image other people did too. Thanks for that, by the way. Much love. Wow, thanks, buddy. I thought this used to tell you. Maybe I'm missing it. I don't care that much. Whatever. Regardless, even with shorts, these are still impressive numbers. And I'm pretty sure she did good viewership on the long form videos too. Why don't you do more YouTube shorts to take away from full video views? We're working on that. We're getting that rolling. Okay. I think we just recently did an announcement this sub, and we've got people where it's like a project that's being actively worked on. Okay. Like these are crazy viewership numbers. 282 million views in a month, 192 million, 174 million, 55 million. Even these low months, 55 million, 100 million. That's just, it's insane views. And then now after they dumped Brett Cooper, 5.3 million, 1 million, 5 million. Like, Jesus. Jesus. And now look at these views. 10,000 views, 12,000 views, 18,000 views, 20,000 views. What was the disagreement that let them lose her? I think these videos were posted daily, weren't they? Oh, wait, that's with the new girl. Okay, and then this was Brett. Oh, so the new girl might have had views for a few episodes, but then look at Brett Cooper here. 1,700,000, 753K, 476K, 281K, 335K, 176K, 465K, almost 500,000 views a video for what I think were almost daily uploads.
So I often see posts on.
This is November 21st.
right, guys.
This was November 21st. Sometimes multiple times a day, I guess, even. Jesus. Yeah, damn, that's insane that they let her go. I don't understand. It has to be money related for her show. I mean, if you're the Daily Wire, you're offering her an incredibly generous contract. So unless she's like very confident that she can step away and just make a ton of money, and she was asking for a ludicrous amount of money, the Daily Wire should have been offering her of money to keep her. I don't know.
Asking for her, they probably should have paid it. I can't help but think about the contract the Daily Wire offered Steven Crowder, and I wonder if Candace Owens and Brett Cooper noticed it too. Were they not being offered the big $50 million deals? Or did they simply grow frustrated working to build up a company neither of them need? Or perhaps they believe they deserved ownership of the show that is built around their talent. All we can really do is speculate, but the important part for the Daily Wire is that two of their major talents leaving meant a big drop in viewing numbers, and quite likely a loss in ad revenue and memberships. Although not as high profile, another failure at the Daily Wire was its publishing line. Launched in 2021, it featured books by Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, and other figures on the right. Although most of its books you probably wouldn't recognize, you might at least be familiar with the Johnny the Walrus children's book that Matt Walsh published, one of the few successes for the line. It eventually closed up in August of 2024. Alyssa Cordova, who was leading the imprint, spoke to Semaphore and said, Daily Wire was actually quite successful with the books we did publish by industry standards, but traditional book publishing is high effort and low margin and doesn't make sense for the pace of our business right now. The article goes on to highlight comparative sales between traditional publishers and conservative upstart publishers, showing how most of the titles offered by conservative publishers in the last few years have struggled to find the same level of success as books by conservative authors coming from traditional publishers. Cordova was reportedly part of the layoffs that hit the Daily Wire in March, though she would later clarify that she voluntarily resigned. This small failure represents one thing that I think is actually kind of neat about the Daily Wire, and that's its tendency to try out weird and different things. What other media company lets its hosts sell board games they make, advertise novelty cigar brands, start a random sports channel, sell weirdo plushies or candles that smell like a monastery? But the reason most companies don't do this is because it's obviously a huge waste of money, because it's hard to find an audience that wants to buy and watch all of this. When researching the Daily Wire, one of the few sources of actual numbers for their inner workings usually comes from Axios, specifically from articles by Sarah Fisher. Unlike a lot of other sources that speculate based on announcements from press releases, Fisher seems to have an in with Jeremy Boring. In fact, Jeremy Boring stepping down from the Daily Wire was an exclusive for her. This isn't that unusual. Fisher is a journalist who specializes in media analysis, so naturally she'd be dealing with a lot of these stories. But something interesting in the last few articles where Jeremy Boring was quoted reveals some interesting hints about the inner workings at the Daily Wire. In May of 2024, there was an article highlighting the success the Daily Wire has had with its commerce vertical, making $22 million in 2023. The article goes out of its way to highlight how Jeremy's Razors, a line of shaving products with Boring as their face, has earned the company $19 million of that $22 million total. That number is revenue though, so it doesn't really tell us how profitable any of this is. And for those keeping track at home, that means roughly $3 million.
Why are you not covering the MAGA terrorist attack? What MAGA terrorist attack?
Was earned in revenue
recently?
from all those hoodies, t-shirts, and embarrassing fan merch that I mentioned a little earlier. Speaking of those razors, I want to go on a little tangent here. I managed to find out where these razors are coming from. Originally, they were being manufactured in China, but in a recent commercial for Jeremy's razors, there's this little line about how they've moved production.
We moved our manufacturing out of China.
According to TradeMo, a website that tracks international supply chains, Benkey Ventures, the LLC that owns the Daily Wire, imported $1.84 million in products from a company called Dorco Co. Limited, which is a Korean company that specializes in manufacturing and selling razors. I went on the Dorco website to try and figure out which of their models was being resold by the Daily Wire, and I'm pretty sure that this handle comes from the TRA 4000 or TRD 5000 models. But what's more important than that is the Dorco razor blades are readily available from other retailers. And
just weeks after President Trump expressed interest in helping couples have children via IVF, a clinic explodes. The fertility clinic and IVF lab near Desert Regional Hospital in Palm Springs, California, significant damage. Was this an intentional? There's no information, no news about it? Don't give a f.
Usually for a lot less. An 8-pack refill of razor blades from Jeremy's Razors costs you $22, while if you were to order those same blades from Amazon, a 16 refill cartridge set will cost you $27. Or if you want a handle on each of those cartridges, you can get a pack of 9 for $21. Or if it's very important for you to support the Daily Wire, I guess you can spend way more money buying those 8-pack refills. The article itself is not that strange, but considering that Boring was the one interviewed for it, it does seem a bit odd that it's highlighting the success that happened to have his face on them, as it's very important for him to be seen as contributing to the financial success of the Daily Wire. This lined up with a lot of Boring's attempt to be the public face of the company, bashing himself as the God King, starring in expensive commercials for his razors, and he even dropped a single at one point. Jeremy Boring clearly wants people to know who he is and to think that he's doing a great job. On the other hand, if you look at Caleb Robinson, the other Daily Wire CEO, he's almost invisible. He seems more content to simply manage the operations of the company without becoming a personality himself. In December of 2024, there was another Axios article about the Daily Wire seeking investment in their company, with Boring commenting on Fox News possibly wanting to buy the Daily Wire to expand their podcast offerings. It was a bit strange as it came off a brief mention in a Semaphore article that mentioned that the Daily Wire was a possible option for Fox. But by commenting on that rumor, Boring was given the opportunity to mention that he believes the Daily Wire is worth more than $1 billion and that it had raised a round of capital in 2023 based on that estimate. That seems like a pretty big admission, as the Daily Wire had always prided itself as operating independent of financial backing. There might be a clue as to how much money the Daily Wire was raising in 2023, as in October of that year, a filing with the SEC revealed that they were seeking $120 million. Of that $120 million, they had already raised $50 million, and the filing mentions that there are 2 investors so far, although it doesn't give us any names on who those people might be. I'm not sure if the Daily Wire got that additional $70 million or who they might have gotten it from, but it does reveal that they were certainly looking for a lot of money. If it's raising capital, it suggests that either the company was on the cusp of expanding or perhaps just really needed the money. Even this whole play of coyly saying that they would be open to being purchased by Fox is another admission that they need an infusion of capital, that either they're looking to expand or that money might be tight. In January of 2025, Jeremy Boring hosted this really strange town hall where he declared victory over trans people after Donald Trump signed an executive order banning certain types of gender-affirming care for minors. Listening to Boring, this is apparently what the Daily Wire had been fighting for years now. This seems like a convenient premise so that Boring can air out a number of grievances. He throws out some wild numbers about how put upon the company has been for its anti-trans stance.
The total cost of the additional shadow banning and removing from recommendation engines and inability to retarget the audiences that we weren't able to engage with in the first place, and all the other consequences of our stand on the trans issue are well in excess of $100 million.
These numbers are impossible to confirm because these are projections heavily based in speculation. It reads as an explanation as to why the Daily Wire is not earning as much money in January of 2025 as it did in January of 2024 or January of 2023, trying to emphasize that the only reason this has happened is because Facebook limited their reach, or that
James Comey posted his 8647 post exactly 8,647 days after 9/11. I don't know why you guys keep typing this or what the point is you think you're making from this. It was obviously, it was like a comment on Trump as well. To say that he literally just did this because that happened to be the one number he chose because it happened to be that many days after 9/11 is you are legit like retarded if you believe that. Obviously, it was pointed towards Trump as well. It just wasn't an explicit call for him to be murdered or killed or something. I don't know why so many of you post this thinking it's like a good argument or something. Like,
YouTube has demonetized a channel or some videos, not mentioning the very obvious problem of letting go popular hosts or investing heavily into entertainment divisions that have had very limited appeal. Boring gets to the point right here.
We had the courage of our convictions to stand up when others were not standing up, that maybe that audience would have our back. And yes, that did redound to our benefit, not to the price of the hundreds of millions of dollars that we've been denied
This is what this whole town hall was all about. So he could complain that while it's true they make money off of anti-trans media, it's really unfair that they're not making even more money off of that. The ironic thing is, if this topic were less controversial and simply a statement of fact, no one would be paying money to watch a documentary to say something everybody always believes in. The controversy is what made the money to begin with. Pretending like they should be earning more is a misunderstanding of what it means to take a stance on any issue that is contentious. Of course, there's going to be blowback, and if you're not willing to accept that, it doesn't sound like you understand the risks inherent with running a business like that. This whole town hall sounds like a man trying to explain why his company doesn't have any money. And he's trying to emphasize that it isn't because of his bad business decisions, rather, it's because of all the enemies they've made for taking a moral stand. In this case, the moral stand of spreading anti-trans propaganda. It all just comes across as desperate. And the comments below this video are going after Jeremy Boring in a way that's pretty surprising. And it reveals how little faith even the Daily Wire audience has in this guy. About 2 months later, the Daily Wire laid off several staff members and Jeremy Boring resigned, really emphasizing how bad the company was doing financially. In spite of all of this bad news, Ben Shapiro is still insisting that the Daily Wire is in great shape.
Obviously.
As somebody who looks at the balance sheet, I can tell you that is certainly not the case. We are healthy, we are growing, we are thriving, and we have extremely big moves that we are looking forward to making this year.
What else is he going to say? That his company is in dire straits as executives step down and employees are laid off? Whatever morale there may be at Daily Wire needs to be kept up somehow. I'm not sure it's working though. I looked at the Glassdoor reviews for the Daily Wire in a previous video, and over time, its average score has only gotten worse. For the sake of the employees, I want to read this recent review to emphasize just how poor morale seems to be there. Pros: trauma bonding with your coworkers. Cons: the VP of Member Experience made employees participate in a 9/11 game of Hangman during a mandatory meeting.
Jesus.
Leadership and HR is completely corrupt. Bad leaders stay in power through blackmail on executives' talent. Constantly outsourcing to the Philippines for cheaper labor. This company does not uphold any values that are spoken about on their shows. The only god here is money and power.
Behave.
Advice to management: turnover is high and continues to be high because of the leadership. At what point will you start looking at leadership for the turnover rate? This review came after Jeremy Boring's resignation, by the way. Anyone currently watching this video right now, I hope it doesn't come as a surprise to you that you're doing an unusual thing. My channel, for all its success, is about niche topics that appeal to a limited audience. Although I do fairly well, there are creators who do much better, and even among them, their audience reflects a small fraction compared to the mainstream. To expand beyond that audience would require someone to completely change the sort of videos they make. What the Daily Wire failed to realize is that they have the exact same problem. Their audience is definitely much bigger than mine. That is certainly the truth. Enough to give them money to mess around with and try to make those movies themselves, but ultimately they are still serving a niche. Conservatives who are so politically engaged that they regularly watch Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh. There are enough people like that to keep a more modest conservative media company afloat, but certainly not enough to create a company that was hoping to one day rival Disney or some other major production company. They were grossly overestimating the power of their reach and how compelling their ideas are. And now it looks like they are in some trouble. That said, I don't really think the Daily Wire is destined for ruin. It's certainly at a low point, even if Ben Shapiro tries to say otherwise. But one major asset conservative media companies have is a nearly endless number of backers willing to open their wallets to keep things going. The only drawback might be that, since the Daily Wire is such a big operation, some investors might scoff at the high price tag to keep it running. That could be another reason why they got rid of so much staff. By ending its failed kids entertainment experiment, they might be hoping to find new investors to give them a new influx of cash. I have no doubt they'll probably have some announcements later in the year that are meant to make their company look like it's actually doing fantastic. But until they actually release numbers to tell people otherwise, we can only really guess that they're spending money that they don't have or making investments that will never come to fruition. Regardless, I'll try to keep a close eye on the company just in case they do have a reversal of fortunes and suddenly are doing much better than they appear to be at this moment. I'll probably have that update when the company finally drops the Pendragon cycle, because I still think that thing might actually come out at some point. I don't think a company spending millions upon millions of dollars on its production are going to let it just sit on a shelf. If anyone from the Daily Wire is watching this and wants some advice about how they can turn their fortunes around so the company won't go broke, I would suggest you guys consider going woke. One thing I didn't really mention in this video, because it's kind of hard to measure, is that a portion of the Daily Wire's audience seems very unhappy with the commentary coming from some of its hosts, specifically Ben Shapiro and his unwavering support of Israel. While it would be nice to say these people simply hate genocide and are pushing back against Ben Shapiro as he gleefully cheers it on, a lot of it seems to be coming from a general anti-Israel sentiment that's based in anti-Semitism rather than any concern for the Palestinian people. Oof. As much as that might hurt the Daily Wire, I think its massive investments not offering anywhere near the returns they need them to are probably much more damaging to their bottom line. This video also has a little more speculation than I'm typically comfortable with, but as someone who has been watching this company for years now, as it's simply lit money on fire to create things no one wants, I would point to my earlier videos, specifically the one on Bentkey, where I said that this whole endeavor looks like it's going to lose them a ton of money and is destined for failure. I'm curious to how this is going to turn out, though, because while I think it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, it's always possible that things could turn around if something dramatic happens. If you'd like to see something dramatic happen on this channel, such as more great videos like this one, do consider becoming a member or a patron like the lovely people whose names you see scrolling up the screen here. You'll get early access to videos, your name in the credits, and exclusive little bonuses I throw in now and again.
Wow, thanks. Okay.